How's it going, everybody? Happy Monday. My story is about my love of football and collectibles and other collectibles outside of football as well. But I was just wondering, do any of y'all guys remember the first sports team that you really fell in love with, or how you became that mega fan of a certain team? Well, I got a weird story to tell about how I became a Denver Broncos fan. Now, I grew up in northern Texas and went and worked construction with my dad, and every weekend, all summer long. And it was universally known that everybody on the construction site, my dad included, were huge Dallas Cowboy fans. Now, when all this started, I really wasn't a huge fan of football. I was young. I really didn't appreciate the sport as I've come to over the years. But what I do remember is how I became a Denver Broncos fan. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, Sonic Drive-In, a fast food restaurant there in Perryton, had a promotional, and they had these plastic mugs that they made root beer floats in. And we went there for dinner one night, and they were all out of the Cowboys because that's what everybody wanted. But then they had, the Buccaneers, they had the Cardinals, they had the New York Giants. I personally got saddled with a Denver Broncos, the old one with the D in the horse and the lance, and that was my mug. The first thing I ever owned with any NFL organization or anything outside of the fact that my dad had plenty of Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders calendars in his work truck and in his tool shed out in the back of our property. So I had this Denver Broncos mug, and I started taking it to work with me every day. I just left it in the work truck so that I'd have something cool to drink my coffee out of, like all the other construction workers out there. They all had the thermos, the green thermos with the lid on top, but most of them had their own individual coffee mugs out there that they carried around in their work trucks. And so I started taking this stupid Broncos mug to work with me, and everybody was giving me guff about it, to be honest with you, and I gotta tell you, I didn't appreciate it. Problem with me saying I was a Broncos fan was I didn't really know anything about the Broncos. And my dad was like, look, if you're gonna back a football team or any position, at least know what the hell you're defending. And he was right. So I started paying attention to the Broncos. And at the moment, they weren't that good. But I had made my stand in the sand. I had my mug. This was my team. And just the fact that it kind of riled my dad and his buddies that I wasn't out there on the Bronco or on the Dallas Cowboys bandwagon, I really appreciated how that made me feel, because football was really one of the first things that I could ever argue with my dad about, and well, honestly, not get my teeth rattled. If you made a point and it didn't stick, you didn't know what you were arguing about, and you didn't know what the heck you were talking about, well, that's no bueno. So here I am. I started figuring out what was going on with the Denver Broncos. And to be honest, like I said, they weren't that good. And they really weren't that good in the year, I think it was the 1983 draft, first pick of the first round was John Elway. Big, tall, handsome feller out of Stanford. And, well, we all know that over, a decade and a half, from 1983 to 1999, he was the starting quarterback. 6 Super Bowls, 2 of them he actually won, and I got to tell you, I almost cried the first time they won a Super Bowl, because I had already had my heart broken 4 times. 4 times, and I was like, oh my God, here's number 5. Ye of little faith. But they went in, they stepped up. Terrell Davis did an amazing job, and I think the first Super Bowl, Terrell Davis was the Super Bowl MVP. And the very next year, in 1999, Elway was the Super Bowl MVP. Rightfully so. Thank God. I loved him so much more that he had the good sense to retire and not be one of these athletes that just hangs on for infinity until you see him playing horribly.
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. Thanks, Jake. I saw a helmet in the NFL shop, and it was dual signed with Elway and Terrell Davis, and they had their Super Bowl MVP inscriptions underneath. Well, sadly, fellas, I couldn't afford it. And I never got it. And by the time I could afford it, I couldn't find one, because they were limited edition, and nobody was ever going to part ways with this beautiful piece of memorabilia. But what I did get, I finally settled on it, and just because I didn't care anymore, I had to get my John Elway. I wanted to get him before it was too late. So what I have here is one of my favorite pieces. Broncos helmet is so elegant and simple. And I love it. I love it. It's just classic helmet. Well, it's not the classic design, but it's everybody worldwide recognition of this beautiful helmet here. And I got John Elway's signature with the number 7 right there. I don't know if you can see that, but it is absolutely gorgeous. He has a pretty signature. And I am so proud of this, and it's such a beautiful helmet, and it's just the colors pop, and I love the Bronco on it, and he looks so tough, just tough guy, you know. And one of these days, maybe I'll run into one and get that classic baby blue helmet with the D and the horse with the lance on it. But for right now, I couldn't be more happy or more proud of this spectacular beauty that I have here, autographed by the great John Elway. And if any of y'all have any good stories to tell about how you became the super fan, and I was a super fan of the Broncos, right up until they took Jake Plummer on And because I couldn't stand Jake Plummer, I couldn't stand him, and I'm sure he'll be heartbroken to hear that. I'm sure he'll just be devastated to find out that there was somebody in Arizona that didn't appreciate him. But I was one of those guys that was like, my Broncos, how could you? You know, how could you do this? But I've always rooted for the Broncos. I love the Broncos, and they'll always have a special place in my heart. They got Russell Wilson now, so it's hard to root for them, because over the years I have become more of a fan of players more than I am of teams. Go Bills. I'm just kidding. I'm really into the Bills right now, but we don't want to end this conversation, this story, on anybody but the Broncos. I love the Denver Broncos. I loved them for a long time. Was super proud of them when they got Manning and won a Super Bowl. And I hope that they give me something to root for in the future, so I can go back to loving them as much as I have historically speaking. But historically speaking, my two favorite teams over the years were always the Denver Broncos and whoever was playing Dallas that weekend. So that's my story for today, fellas. I hope you enjoyed it. Share your comments, like and subscribe.